No, please don't go. Look, it's not my fault. I've been under a lot of stress lately, and... Would it help if I told you that this house is haunted and I'm being plagued by ghosts who are making my life a misery?
Not really, no.
Hello and welcome to Haunting Button House, the BBC Ghost podcast, a podcast recapping and reviewing the BBC series Ghosts. I'm Luke.
And I'm Tash.
You keep getting caught off guard by that, didn't you?
I wasn't expecting it.
Well, to be fair, I've messed up the intro anyway. This is the second time of doing it because I copied and pasted it from the last time. So, we all make mistakes. But anyway, how are you?
I'm alright, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad. How has your week been since the last recording?
It was okay until Saturday.
Oh. I was like, what did we do Saturday? And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So... I mean, we can go into it if you want, into detail.
You can tell the team what we did on Saturday.
So, in the UK, there's a place called Warhammer World, which is, if you've seen people playing like miniature games and stuff like that, it's kind of like the home of all that. And it's just a lot of nerds, basically, a lot of nerds in one space, and. Yeah, I don't think you were ready for the amount of nerds in one space, were you?
No, it was fine.
It was
okay.
We had food though, which was
we did have
food. The food was okay, so that's all the main thing. But anyway, that's not for this podcast. But yeah, so that was our weekend and week. But have we had any feedback or any comments from our last week episodes?
Yeah, so obviously I post onto some of the groups that are on Facebook. About the podcast. So Scott said that he liked the bit in the last episode of Ghosts where Robin says gorilla always win. So we kind of discussed that, didn't we, in the episode, and I think we sort of liked that too.
I like that sort of implies that he's been in a literal guerrilla war before.
Yeah.
So
I like to think so. Yeah. Hopefully we never find out if that's true, if gorillas always win. I don't want to know. And Tamsin agreed that the captain does need, I like how she worded this, time to thaw out. I quite liked that analogy of his personality. Frosty, yeah. So obviously we'll see that kind of as we go through. So
I think even he starts in this episode slightly. I mean, he's still a bit uptight, but it's starting to slip with some things that he says, especially later on. But anyway, we'll get to that in our rundown.
We will get to that.
We might as well just get straight into the episode then.
Yep.
So this week we are looking at Happy Death Day, which was directed by Tom Kingsley. We should probably stop saying that because I know for a fact that he directs all of the episodes for this series. So basically from this moment forward, Tom Kingsley directs them all. But I'll probably forget and say that. Well, you'll forget and say that next week and I'll say the week after. So, but he does have a different writer. It's written by Ben Willibond, who plays the captain. And the original air date was the 29th of April 2019. One note I did make is that we've not mentioned where this is all filmed so far. So I had a look at where it's actually filmed, and it's filmed at a place called West Horsley Place in Surrey, England, obviously. Which is a large country house, which was also unexpectedly inherited by the writer and former University Challenge presenter Bamber Gascoigne in 2014 from his great aunt, the Duchess of Roxburgh, I think, under similar circumstances not dissimilar to those depicted in the series. So there you go. That's where the house is, anyway.
That's interesting.
And also some scenes were filmed on London Road and in Clandon Road in nearby Guildford. So yeah,
I think you can go and visit the house, can't you?
Probably, yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Maybe if people have been, they can let us know what it's like and what you can do there.
We should get our book out. The one we've got the places that, what are they called now? National Heritage?
Trust.
National Trust, that's
I don't think it's National Trust.
Is it not National
I
Trust?
don't think so.
Okay, well.
Could be, but I don't think it is.
We'll have to have a look, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can do a road trip.
Podcast
on the road.
And it'd be a short one because we'd be like, yeah, it looks like the show. Anyway, so yeah, we start this episode and we get a bit of a flashback to 1984. We're at Button House and we see Pat with a bunch of Boy Scouts and they're all doing their outdoor activities. And this is the first one, as he says, it's A for archery. So, bit foreboding.
Yeah. There's only 5 of them.
Yeah. That's surprising. Yeah.
I didn't obviously wasn't in Scouts, but I was in the Brownies, which is like is it the female equivalent? I don't know. I was in the Brownies, and there was loads of us. Like not just 5. I mean, whether they were the only 5 that were allowed on the trip.
Yeah, maybe they just didn't trust. But he said archery, and they didn't trust him. There's
maybe
5 parents who didn't care.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting. There was only 5 of them.
I also thought with this, it's quite sad that this is literally the first activity that they're doing on this trip, and it's going to end in disaster.
Don't. I actually find this episode quite emotional.
That's one of my notes as well.
Yeah, he's just such a nice guy, and he just obviously I don't want to skip too far ahead. Maybe I won't skip. Maybe we'll go in order of what I was going to say.
So yeah, he hands out the bow and the arrows, and they sort of pass it down the line as he's sort of explaining the health and safety rules. He says it's actually more likely that you'll injure yourself running and tripping over. But before we even get to that point, one of the Boy Scouts has a perfect aim, to be honest, depending on how you look at it, and fires it straight through Pat's neck. He's shocked, panics a bit, and starts fumbling for his keys. He says that one of the kids might need to drive him to the hospital or contact his wife, Carol. As he realizes, actually, I'm going to have to get in the bus and drive. And actually manages to make his way to the bus. I keep saying bus. It's a Black Country thing, that is. For anybody listening.
It's a
bus. Gets in. He has to break the arrow as well because that's too big to get into the... and he starts it up. The Wanderer starts playing, which I don't know if that's the last song you ever want to hear.
I had to look up who sings that, actually.
Yeah, it didn't sound like the original version.
No,
yeah.
It's originally by Dion DiMucci.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But
yeah,
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, because I think he was just called Dion. I think he's like that's it. Yeah, but yeah, he starts the bus and drives it forward, swerves a bit, and then crashes into the tree before we assume that he dies here. This was really sad.
Yeah.
I remember it watching it the first, or in my head watching it the first time. It was comedic and quite funny. This was just heartbreaking. A man who's struggling to breathe and gargling and that.
Yeah.
As he's dying.
I think I had a few points about it. I think it was horrific to watch.
Yeah.
And I kind of obviously we watched this for the second time. I kind of forgot that it happened so early on in the episode. I knew that it was going to be discussing Pat's death day. But I just forgot how early it happened. So I kind of wasn't expecting it. And when you kind of hear the arrow go through, I was like,
yeah.
Oh no. I forgot that it happened. But I think as he's, he is, even though he's walking around with an arrow through his neck, he's thinking of the children and saying you don't want to see this in your dreams, look away and someone call Carol please, and it's just awful. And also, was that child held to account for the murder of Pat? That's not discussed.
Yeah, I mean, we never find out, do we?
No.
If this kid, I mean, it is an accident.
An accident through negligence of the child.
You could argue it's Pat's negligence, though. Of not.
No, Pat. No.
Do you know what I think makes it worse as well? There's no music under it, so it's literally just him struggling and dying right in front of you. And it's like, obviously it's the image of it when you see him as a ghost is funny, but like the reality of it is like
horrendous.
Quite harrowing,
Awful.
And that's the intro.
Yeah.
So that sets us up for the rest of the episode. Then we cut to, after the intro, we cut to present day, and Alison and Mike are in bed. Alison wakes up Mike begrudgingly and suggests that they've got some time alone. I like how in this instance Mike is like just like groggy, not interested. As soon as he cottons on to what she's saying, he's like, oh, and straight awake and alert. Which...
I am very awake.
But Mike does pause a bit because he's worried that the ghosts might be in there. But Alison says, no, it's fine. There's no ghosts. We're completely alone in here. And then immediately turns over and sees Kitty sat on the other side of the bed, which completely kills the mood. And there stops this in its tracks, basically. As then a pigeon flies in. We hear the builders turn up as well. So, that's their moment lost, I suppose.
Yeah.
We then see Robin downstairs, who's playing imaginary chess with himself.
He's not playing imaginary chess, he is playing chess.
I mean, he has to imagine where the pieces are going, so...
I suppose, I suppose.
He's got like a visual cue, but... But a builder, the builder we find out is later called Terry, comes in and pops his tool chest, or like a box with a drill in on the pieces, knocks them all over, and then starts up the power tools, which interests Robin, which again,
I love how Robin's like impressed with the drill. It's like, like when it makes a noise.
Well, I imagine his tools would have just been like rocks, you know what I mean? So this is mental to him, really, isn't it? Fanny then arrives and sees all this commotion happening, but is immediately offended by the amount of builders' bums that she sees.
She's absolutely horrified.
And she immediately calls a meeting. She says it's an emergency meeting about what they can do with the builders. So the captain proposes, as he always does, that they need to fight them, and he starts giving out some variation of the Winston Churchill speech, saying that they need to fight them on the landing. And Robin sort of brings up the fact that they don't have rocks, sticks, or bears to fight them with, which confuses the captain. Thomas is looking a bit gloomy as he realises he can't convey his emotions to Alison because of all this commotion that's going on. It's distracting him from his work, which is kind of the dream excuse, for any bohemian type who doesn't really have an idea of what they're doing. It's like, oh, I'm too distracted. But I do like how every time something happens, he always says, damn your eyes, which is a powerful line, I think.
Yeah. I think that comes back to like the captain and how he's a bit frosty. Like he always has like snide comments under his breath.
Yeah.
Like he always... I've written here, he says, almost certainly not, under his breath, after Thomas explains Alison doesn't understand his feelings for her. And he's kind of, I don't know, there's quite a lot of times when he kind of says stuff under his breath, but then they all do. They all have these, like, sort of funny lines that they say that the other ghosts kind of don't hear or pretend not to hear, or...
I wonder if they've just not managed to... So obviously we see later on in the series they managed to gel a bit more, especially with Alison's help. I wonder if they're kind of less cohesive as a group, you know what I mean, up until this point. So they're a bit more like sick of one another because, well, I imagine they've been around each other for years and years at this point. So as we then see Alison is coming downstairs with Kitty, sort of explaining that she shouldn't watch them in the bedroom. And Kitty asks, were they making a baby? To which Alison sort of says, no, we're trying to get practice in. She also describes it as, how's your father? To which Kitty says, he's dead most likely.
No, she says, he's dead, I think.
I think, that's it, yeah. She realises that Kitty's got no idea how this all happens, as Kitty says that she thinks babies are made by pressing ears together.
So innocent.
Yeah, which is this is like the first proper indication that she's quite childish. Yeah. Not in like a bad way, like she just doesn't know.
Innocent, I think, is
really
what she
innocent.
Is,
yeah. Alison then goes on to try and explain how babies are made, but is kind of saved by Terry the builder, who says he needs to talk to her. The ghosts are then trying to explain to Alison as she's coming down the stairs their sort of woes with the builders.
Hi, Terry. You all right, mate?
There you are. Jolly good. Now, look here. I mean, I thought the Blitz was bad, but your builders make the Luftwaffe look like a youth group. No offence, Pat. We know your lot were capable of killing.
Please, not now.
I just laughed so much at that. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I didn't catch it first time. I think I was like trying to make notes.
I think you heard me laughing, and you're like, "What were you? Which bit?"
Yeah, but yeah, in when you sort of listen back to it, I suppose as well. This is one point of reviewing a show is when you're making notes of what's happening, you lose stuff of the context, and you're just like, "Yep, that's what they say." Yeah,
it's really funny.
But yeah, so the builders then go on to explain that they've basically found, or they fixed one problem with the ceiling, but they found another problem with the drainage, and says that this will basically cost more money, which Mike flat says they don't have, which Alison kind of tries to downplay. And as the builders are talking about something, she says to Mike that she's basically going to try and smooth talk them into a more convenient rate of payment.
So I think Alison at that point is also trying to appear like she hasn't got the ghosts shouting at her.
Yeah.
But they also like help her out with the history of the house.
Yes.
Which is incredibly helpful. Like we could do with that here, really.
Yeah.
That would be very useful.
The amount of times we've been asked when were these pipes done, and we're like, we don't know.
So yeah, I think that would be really actually quite useful to have some ghosts to tell us. And fixing the boiler as well when the plague ghosts help Mike to fix boiler. Incredibly helpful. If there's anybody who wants to help us,
you're advocating for everyone to have ghosts just hang around. It would be a very different world, wouldn't it?
Very useful. Yeah.
I do like the bit as well where Alison gets scared that Pat is going to get hit by one of the builders and says watch out, and then has to cover it up and plays it off that it's the amount of sugar that Terry's having in his cup of tea.
Yeah, I think because the pole like goes through him, doesn't it? So I guess that like I never really thought about it before, but like that yucky feeling that they get when a human passes through them can't be the same as when an object, because they pass through walls, doors.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Well. Yeah,
and that doesn't make them shudder or that yucky feeling. So it must be just when
either people
or animals or human, like something living, I guess, passes through them. It must be just that gives them that like yucky feeling.
Could be. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that really. But yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, we do go back to Pat, who's sort of standing in the I never know what rooms they are, but he's standing in one of the big rooms, and he's looking really sad, really upset. And he explains to Kitty that tomorrow is his death day. And as he's trying to explain this, Kitty cuts him off immediately and just starts asking him how babies are made. So yeah, she's trying to figure all this out now. We see Thomas then looking longingly out of... Well, he's not looking out of the window, he's just looking near the window, I suppose. And he goes into this kind of soliloquy about Alison that he sort of can't finish because he's interrupted by a builder who comes and scratches his crotch right in his face. This builder looked really familiar as well. I can't remember what he's in another like comedy program.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I didn't look up who the actors were of it. It's probably one of those where...
I can picture him now, but I can't remember.
We then see Julian, Robin and Fanny watching the builders, and Julian says that he just hates builders. He said that he's had run-ins with builders in the past when he was doing up I can't remember where he says, but it's an 11-bedroom property with a tennis court and all this stuff. And the captain says, it sounds expensive, which he says, no, it's all paid for with taxpayers' money through expenses. But then goes on to say how builders are all thieves to a man, which I thought was quite funny. Just that immediate follow up to that with no awareness of what he's just said.
Yeah.
But he says that they should watch the builders, and if they see them do anything untoward, basically report it to Alison so she gets rid of them. And the captain says with a flea in their ear, or gives them a flea in their ear or something like that.
Send them away with a flea in their ear.
That's it. To which Robin says that he does have a flea in his ear, because it's dead. And he also mentions he's got worms, so
nice.
Yeah, I don't know where these worms would be.
I dread to think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially as later on somebody says that he smells. So
yeah,
we'll see. We see Julian and the captain trying to catch the two builders being bad. He overhears them having a conversation, and one of the builders, I think is Wixie, is talking about how he needs to leave work early today because he's working on his community project in building a children's playground. Which Julian says, well, it's been nice, and then that's been weird nice, which sounds about right for Julian. We go back to the kitchen. We see Alison sort of wandering around, and she's ambushed by Pat, who then explains that today's family, tomorrow his family will basically come to the house to pay their respects at the tree where he died. At the stump of where the tree was, because he mentions that was blown away in the storm or the hurricane of 1987, which I think is that the one that Michael Fish said there, where there wasn't going to be a storm and then it came and destroyed loads of people's property.
Really? I don't know.
It was like Michael Fish was like a weather presenter, and everyone used to take the piss.
How do you know you weren't even born then?
I remember seeing on one of these Channel 5 TV moments or something, like one of those programs. But yeah, Pat says, this year is different because obviously Alison, being alive, can give them a message. Alison thinks this is a really bad idea, which, I mean, it probably would. Imagine a woman just coming over to you and says, the ghost of your dad is telling me there's something. You'd be like, what is going on? It would be really out there, I suppose.
See, I would believe that.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Especially given if they gave such information that only he would
accurate
know
stuff. Yeah, I suppose if he literally was telling them this stuff, it would be like, oh, okay, yeah.
Whereas you wouldn't believe it.
I'd think somebody was trying to con me for some reason, but yeah, I don't know.
Get money out of you somehow.
Pat goes on to explain that his wife remarried, and he actually remarried his best friend, who he says was always there for her, even before his death. And he said, at one point, how he just basically exclaims, "It's fine." Clearly,
the realization, that the smile slowly drops from his face, and he realizes that Carol and Morris had been together before Pat had passed.
Yeah,
and I find it interesting that he'd not really considered that before. In all the time, so he died in 1984. Not entered his head. He's only just thought of that moment and realised what it meant.
I wonder if with the other ghosts he's never bothered to recount that story. And they've not had an interest in who these people are. He just goes and sees them maybe on his own. So he never sort of...
But he remembered the story to think about it. I don't know. I just think that's really sad. Yeah. Incredibly sad.
We then see Mike going for a shower, and he's clearly worried that the ghosts are watching him, so he gets changed really sheepishly and keeps himself covered at all times, and then eventually goes into the shower in his trunks, much to Mary's annoyance, who is sat in the bath waiting for him. Who's the bigger pervert here, Mary or Thomas?
Mary, she's fully in
She's
there,
incredibly aggressive.
To be fair, Thomas probably would if he didn't know that Alison could see him.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's difficult to say, really, but Mary's like literally sat in the bath,
and even later on that she full on comes out to Alison and says, "Yeah, I'm watching him."
Yeah.
So
that's a weird one.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no even like, I suppose with Thomas, he tries to frame it as he's in love, whereas Mary's just like sort of seeming naked.
Catch a look, yeah.
Julian and the captain continue on their mission to catch them doing something wrong. At one point, Mike drops his wallet, and they think, we've got him here, and then Terry gives Mike his wallet back. The captain then goes on to pull an Uncle Albert and goes on to explain how it's just like during the war, basically. Monty in the desert in 42, and and Julian is just like, not this again. He's got a low tolerance for pretty much everyone, because he says this about Thomas as well.
Yeah.
So,
it kind of goes back to them making those little like sort of snide, sarcastic comments under their breath.
Yeah.
Which, as you say, like maybe they've not sort of like, they don't understand each other quite yet, and they needed Alison to help them to do that, even though they've spent so long together.
Yeah, it is funny as well, because like the others, you can kind of understand it because it's hundreds of years, like some of them. Whereas Julian, I think it was 94, was it, or something like that he died. So it's like only I imagine it's set when it's filmed, so like 2019, so 15 years.
Yeah,
not too long of a time, I suppose. So anyway, but then again, 15 years just being trapped with the same people and you can't leave at all ever. Maybe. Anyway, we see Mike getting in his car, and he says that he's going to the pub, and Alison quickly rumbles him and says that he's doing a Glastonbury. And then goes on to explain how during Glastonbury he left the entire festival just because he needed a poo. To which Mike says that he needs poo space. Don't know why I thought of Peep Show then. It's very Peep Show kind of thing. He needs poo space. So I get that. I need pee space, I think.
Pee space.
She tries to tell him that ghosts aren't watching him now, and there's none actually trying to watch you, but Mary then appears and says that she is. Alison gets spooked and throws her mug at Mary and almost hits Terry as he's walking out of the house.
Poor town.
Yeah, he gets quite a lot of abuse, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he really does.
One thing as well, Alison, hell of a throw. She manages to launch it from where she's standing to about 10 metres away, and it like pretty decent velocity, man. I was quite impressed with it. We see Thomas again continuing to try and come up with his poem, this time in the basement, but he's annoyed this time by the plague ghosts who are trying to help him finish off lines, rhyming lines basically. They're actually quite good at it, actually, if you work through the process with them. So
I think it's interesting. I think it was only at this point in the episode that I realised we were kind of like making our way through each of the characters. What are they doing on this day? Like, because they're not all together, they're doing their own thing. They've all got their own things that they're working through. And then we kind of like start that process again. So like we're constantly having these really short, like 30-second scenes or minute scenes just with like the one or two ghosts that are doing that particular thing at that time. So it's not really an episode that I know we're only 3 in.
Yeah.
But like the other episodes, the ghosts have more been like a group rather than we're sort of like exploring their characters on their own. Yeah, separately this time. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I know Anne thought of that. But yeah, it is. And they do come together at points, obviously, especially in the next scene with Kitty and Fanny, where they do meet and mingle. But just a note as well, if you do hear like a wind noise in the UK at the moment, it's really windy, so there is a wind noise coming down the stairs. The fireplace, sorry. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't pick up on the mic, but if you do hear a gust, that's what it is. We're not outside.
But yeah, as I mentioned, Kitty and Fanny are talking about the birds and the bees, quite literally, as they're out in the flower gardens. As Kitty wants some more information on how babies are made, but doesn't really get it, as Fanny tries to start to explain it, but then just gets annoyed at the bees, the bees being the men.
Sometimes bees only like other bees. That's what she says.
Seems, but yeah, very specific to a certain situation
that she found herself in.
Exactly, yeah. The ghosts then, as a group, all find, well, 4 of them anyway, find the builders watching a video on their phone with some monkeys doing something which both offends and captivates them. They're all kind of unable to watch it, but unable to look away, especially Fanny, who has the most expressive face ever. In this, she keeps looking away as like, oh, but then looks back as like she can't take her eyes off.
She wants to look, really.
Basically, yeah. I mean, it sounds like a funny video, potentially.
Is it a real video?
Yeah, I don't know. But it comes back up later. I think it's kind of you can kind of guess what it is, and then later on they kind of explain what it is. Alison then goes to try and negotiate with Terry in the kitchen about this what is it, drainage, isn't it, issue that they've got, and actually nail him down on a price. But as she's doing this, Fanny interrupts and basically talks over him, so she can't have this conversation. She's talking about the video that she's just seen, so Alison ends up getting her words mixed up and ends up offending Terry basically by telling him he shouldn't watch this video in the house, basically. So I think this is the beginning of the end for their relationship. Pat arrives after Terry's left and says that he doesn't actually want her to leave a message for his wife now. Instead, he wants her to kill her so they can be a ghost together, but mentions, just don't mark her face with whatever way you kill her. Alison kind of questions this, and Pat realises what he's just said and runs away upset. Calls himself a monster man as well.
Is that a thing?
I don't know, yeah.
Because I was like, Monster Mash was what kind of came into my head.
It sounds like a reference to
something, yeah.
I'm not sure
probably
either.
Should have looked that up. If anybody knows, let us know.
Yeah.
It kind of made me think, because he said, I'm a monster man. So it kind of...
maybe it's a song lyric or something like that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll have to have a look.
Yeah. We then see Thomas sighing about his current predicament, but he feels like he's being mocked by Pat, who's also sighing in his sighing space that he calls it. Pat is upset and says that he doesn't even know if he wants his family to come now. And Thomas and Robin have this insightful chat about how eventually people move on.
I actually don't know if I want them to come anymore.
I hate to be the one to tell you this, Patrick, but eventually no one will come. That's just the way of it.
What Thomas tried to say is, you die. Time pass, everything change. Family not come anymore. It's pain, but you heal. You remember them here. And maybe one day you find new family.
Francis, a pint, man. Oh, yeah. Oh. Spin your buying that.
Wait up, guys!
He stinks.
He does a bit.
I think Robin is so intelligent in so many ways. But maybe he doesn't articulate it particularly well sometimes. But then he also does say it in the most perfect way. It's really he's such an interesting character because he's just got so much knowledge and emotionally intelligent as well, not just intelligent about the world.
Wise is what I would call him. He's not intelligent, but he's wise. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
I noted in this part that it's funny that the poet is really blunt and rude, is just telling Pat that, you know, people will just stop coming and not caring about his feelings. Yet the caveman is feeling and thoughtful. Can't speak today. You know, so it's quite funny that those two characters are flipped in this scene anyway.
I do find Thomas quite blunt sometimes. He's very dramatic, but incredibly self-absorbed. It's always like, oh, it's so dramatic for him. Oh, it's terrible for him. It's, you know, he's very sort of only interested in his own emotion, I suppose. He doesn't maybe this is just on this few episodes, I suppose. Like we may change our opinions and stuff as the series goes on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do find him quite blunt in what he says. Like, he doesn't really consider other people's feelings, but he expects them to kind of consider how he's feeling.
I think a lot of the ghosts are like that initially. They kind of have their worst traits, like, right at the beginning. But yeah, so yeah, we kind of see it on the show here. And as he leaves, as you just said about being blunt, Thomas says that he stinks a bit, and they agree. We then see a short scene between Kitty and Julian, as Julian is, I wouldn't say explaining how a baby is made.
How they're not made.
Yeah. He goes on to explain what a Norwegian picnic and a Himalayan campsite are, which again, I've not looked into this one, but I imagine they're not real positions.
Kitty looks absolutely horrified.
Yeah, she looks as though, I wish I hadn't have asked this question. Alison, the next day, we see her at the door offering bacon sandwiches to the builders as they all arrive. We see Mike leaving again, and he said that he's going to the gym.
To poop.
Yeah, as the pubs rumbled him. We then see, you know, this bacon sandwich plan basically is to sort of butter up Terry. And as she goes to give him one, he says that he's vegan, which must be the first vegan builder I've ever seen, to be honest. There's got to be vegan builders out there. But, you know,
why not?
Well, yeah, exactly. It's a changing world. We then see Robin, who's excited to see his builder pals again, basically. He's sort of formed a bond, or he's thinking he's formed a bond with them anyway. He knows all their names. We see Thomas again back in the study trying to come up with some inspiration. He is inspired by the insightful words of one Kylie Minogue, as we hear I Should Be So Lucky playing over the radio.
Isn't it? No, who is it?
Stock Aitken
Waterman, yeah. I
Classic.
don't think Kylie wrote the song.
Well, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, I didn't think that. Yeah, she probably just sang it, didn't she? So,
yeah.
Giving her credit, isn't she?
I know.
The song always just reminds me of Inside Number 9 now, like with that ending of that one episode. But while we then see Alison taking down the curtains, because Terry basically said that he needs her to take the curtains down to continue work in that room. And as she's doing that, she realizes, I don't know why she does it actually, but she takes off her engagement ring.
I think she catches it maybe on the curtain, because you can see on the ring a little bit of curtain thread.
Okay, yeah, I missed that bit. But yeah, she takes off her ring then and puts it on the side, and Julian and the captain hatch a plan at this point. Mary comes running in, screaming about the devil. The first time I watched this, I didn't really think nothing of it, but I think Mary was brought in on this plan to just distract her, because she doesn't seem to have a plan when she eventually takes her to what she...
Yeah, because don't they push Mary through the wall?
Do they? I didn't even see her do that. I thought she just comes running in. She might have been pushed through.
I'm sure they put... Well, how can they push her?
Yeah, can a ghost push another ghost? That's not sure.
Okay.
Julia, maybe.
So I thought that they had... Yeah, I thought they'd kind of got her to run through the wall because she distracts Alison. Yeah. And she falls off the ladder so that Julian and the captain can move her ring. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I thought that's what happened. I mean, we're both questioning
No, I think Mary's definitely in on the plan. But the first time I watched it, I didn't realise. I thought it was just Mary being Mary, basically. Because she says that she comes running, screaming about the devil, and then when they finally go to see what the devil is, turns out it's just a swan. As we see some. To be honest, the first time I've gone, that's not a good effect. Some clearly green screened in swans onto the lawn. And Mary then goes on to say, with how many swans there is, that the devil's been busy. Or the devil is busy.
He's busy, yeah.
We see Alison go back in, and now she sees that the ring is missing. After earlier we'd seen Julian trying to push the ring, and he does push it, doesn't he?
Into the builder's toolbox.
And Julian and the captain quite quickly grass up the handsome one, as the captain refers to him.
Yeah.
Again, another sort of hint. Alison confronts the builders and basically makes them all turn out their pockets. And rightly so, Terry is really offended by this.
Yeah, you would be. Because I guess they haven't done anything wrong.
No.
But as she says, when he gets annoyed with her and says that it will be their last day working, she says, would it help if I told you that the house is haunted and I've been plagued by ghosts who are making my life a misery? It's like, most people wouldn't believe that.
No,
they would just think she's crazy.
Yeah, I think she's just realised she's screwed it up, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I need to just go for anything now. But yeah, she quickly rumbles that that Julian is the one who's hatched this plan, as he's looking quite smug with himself, as when I think it is Wixie gets caught with the ring. But as the builders are all leaving, we see Pat's family arrive. They all get out of the car and are sort of standing around, and Alison says that she'll speak to them. What does he want to say? And Pat says, just let them move on. But Alison goes and speaks to them anyway.
I think even at that point, like, he is thinking of others again.
Yeah.
Like, he desperately wants to, like, speak to them, give them information, let them know he's okay, through Alison. And whether he doesn't want to put Alison in a difficult position, or whether he just knows that maybe after the realisation that his wife has moved on with Morris, that, he doesn't want to upset them by giving them information. So even though that's what he desperately wants, is to feel that connection with them, he's like still thinking of others and putting their feelings over like what he wants. And I think that is just him. That's just who he is.
Yeah, thoughtful. And yeah, he kind of gets what he wants in the end without... He kind of gets the best of both worlds, because we then see Alison come back and she says that she didn't tell him anything about Pat, but she says that she basically had asked them for information about themselves and who they are, and she lets Pat know about what they're up to, that and I think she even gets a dig in at Morris, and says that he's really short, which is a bit offensive, but okay, fair enough. But yeah, in quite an emotional part, she then goes on to say that Pat's son actually named their son Pat after him. Pat goes running over. I said filled with emotion, as am I. And basically he says that he's got his legs. And when he comes back, you can he says that he's bursting with emotions. And at this point, we then see a bright light appear, and Pat and the rest of the ghosts, and I think everybody else thinks that this is Pat's time to move on. He's kind of accepted his fate, but it's time for him to move on. And he kind of starts bigging up a few people and then starts absolutely slagging off some of the other ghosts, which gets a bit awkward as they find out that the light is actually just some of the builders' lights. as they were moving it through.
Because he says he doesn't trust Julian. He says Julian, who he doesn't trust.
Fair point.
Fair enough. Yeah. Lady Button, who probably just needs to chill out a little bit.
Fair point.
And the captain, who needs to. I put get over the war, but I don't think he gets over the war. Yeah. Just move past it because it's over.
Yeah. Which I think, again, all valid points. I think they should take those on board. Really.
Yeah, they absolutely won't do that.
No. While this is all happening as well, we do see Mike coming back and seeing the builders leave, and he's a bit confused by it all. And we then see Kitty sort of say that she still doesn't know. She said that it's nice that they had a baby, and she says, I still don't know how they're made. So Alison shows her the monkey video, which I guess explains everything.
Yeah.
Probably in graphic detail, I imagine. Alison explains to Mike that she screwed up the sweet talking plan. And Mike says it's okay, it's fine. The drainage is held so far, so, it should be fine, as it then bursts in the background. Then of the evening, sort of the end of the episode, we see Thomas ambush Alison in the bedroom. And he begins to read his poem to her. And Alison joins in halfway through. And he's a bit confused at how they're so in sync with their words, and she kind of lets him know, that's just Kylie Minogue. To which he's flabbergasted that he's plagiarised Miss Minogue, as he calls her.
Yeah.
And he asks...
To let her know.
Yeah, he asks her to send correspondence and apologise. Which would be interesting, the letter that she sent to Kylie anyway, if she did that. Mike comes in and sort of says, he's got to get over... As the theme of the episode is kind of everyone moving on and getting past things, he realises he needs to get over the ghosts and just not worry about them. So he strips naked to the full Monty, as Alison says, and he starts dancing naked through the house and shouting in defiance. As we then see the ghosts are in a completely different room and are completely uninterested with what he's doing. So, yeah.
I think it's like another sort of layer of Mike accepting the ghosts, even though he can't see them. Or never knows if they're actually there or not. It's kind of him, just like accepting that they're there, basically.
They're in the house and they could be with him at any moment.
At any moment.
So you just have to be like, whatever, if you're seeing it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the end of the episode. What do you think?
I thought it was good.
Yeah,
I thought it was good. I liked exploring Pat's kind of like how he died and his sort of background. But yeah, overall, I thought it was good.
It was the first flashback we saw of somebody's actual death, isn't it? We haven't seen anybody else.
We didn't see Fanny's, did we?
Yeah, Fanny explains what happened,
but we didn't actually see. Yeah. She recreates it, doesn't she? Really,
I guess so. Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, what did you think?
I thought it was way sadder and more emotional than I remembered. Like, I remember there being... Pat's episodes tend to have a lot of emotion to them, if I remember right. But, this was more emotional than I thought. The builder subplot is okay. It kind of...
Yeah.
It kind of just moved everybody
forward.
Away. Yeah.
I felt from Pat's story. I'd have liked... Knowing the other episodes, I suppose, and... knowing how much deeper we go into some of the other stories of the characters where they've got a whole episode kind of dedicated to them and their death day. I kind of wanted more of Pat and less of the builders.
Yeah, that's what
it's almost like two separate things crammed into one episode.
I feel like the builder plot was there just to give all the other ghosts something to do. But it didn't help Pat's backstory. But I did think Pat's backstory and the reunion with his family and everything was really heartfelt and definitely like elevated the episode for me.
Definitely.
I think it'd be a poorer episode without that. So
100%.
What would you rate it?
Difficult. I always forget that I need to rate it.
You don't have to rate it.
I know I don't have to, but that's what we like. That's what we said we'll do, and I just keep forgetting to do it. Oh, it's really tricky. I'm gonna... Oh, God. I'm gonna I'm going to say 6.5.
6.5, fair enough. I gave it an 8.
Wow.
But that's purely on the Pat story. I think if the Pat story wasn't there, this would be probably about a 6 for me as well.
Maybe I need to go higher. Maybe a 7? Maybe a 7.
Yeah.
Maybe a 7. I think, again, it's kind of like what I said last week, is that I know there's better episodes. So I kind of don't want to give a really high score. And I love Pat. He's definitely one of my favourite ghosts. If not my favourite. I just feel he was cheated in his story a little bit.
Yeah.
And we definitely needed to explore that more. But maybe we do explore it a bit more.
I think we do.
Yeah,
there's an episode I remember with other parts about Pat's backstory. So I can't remember when it is or what.
We'll get to it though.
We will get to it, but they definitely bring it up.
So that's I'll stick with a 7.
7. Well,
I'll stick with a 7.
The audience score with 792 votes was a 7.8. So closer to 8, but kind of in the middle of both of us, I suppose. So yeah, not too far off it, I think.
This episode, where we're looking at our haunted buildings across the West Midlands, I decided to look into Shrewsbury Prison. So last week you looked at the place. What you looked at?
The Manor House.
The Manor House
got a different name now, but
West Bromwich, if you're Luke, or West Bromwich, because you grew up around West Brom, and I grew up in Shrewsbury, so I thought I'd give Shrewsbury Prison a go. I'm sure there's probably a lot more haunted buildings in Shrewsbury.
Castle, I suppose.
Yeah,
maybe the castle.
I went for the prison.
We've done castle. We've done
castles. We've done them a lot.
We've done a manor house. Now a prison.
Prison. So, Shrewsbury Prison in Shropshire was in operation from 1793 until 2013.
That late? I thought it was like done in the 50s.
It was actually closed due to overcrowding, which I thought was interesting. And it was recently ranked by BBC Radio 4, so legit, as one of the most chilling places for ghost hunters to set foot in. Back in the Victorian era, mass crowds would gather to watch public executions, with some of those sentenced to death for crimes such as stealing sheep. So that, stealing a sheep would get you hanged. Yeah.
It's mad that back in the day it was just that was entertainment, just watching somebody get hanged.
It's horrendous though, isn't it?
Yeah.
These outdoor gruesome events would see members of the public gather hours beforehand to get the best viewing spot and even obtain posters as souvenirs. I dread to think what was on the posters. Yeah. So between 1795 and 1961, a total of 63 people were executed at Shrewsbury Prison for crimes at both major and minor, most of them by public hanging. Their bodies were then buried in the prison yard, earning it the reputation as one of the most haunted places in the world. So I kind of had a look at some of the people that were hanged at Shrewsbury Prison, and then sort of looked at sort of the paranormal things that have happened there. So on the 9th of February 1961, 21-year-old George Riley was executed by hanging for the murder of a 62-year-old woman. This would be the last execution at Shrewsbury Prison before capital punishment was abolished in 1969. George pleaded not guilty to the murder, and there are still questions around the case about if George was actually guilty and if he should have been hanged. So for anyone that's interested in the references for this, I've put a BBC article that talks specifically about George's case.
I mean, whether he did it or not, I'd be gutted to be the last person to be hanged somewhere, because it's like, could you not have waited and I'll just have life imprisonment at least?
But I think, I might be wrong, they only hanged people if they were absolutely certain that they did it.
But then again, it brings into question, can you be absolutely certain? Yeah.
But yeah, he pleaded not guilty, and as I said, there's still questions about whether he actually committed the murder. So I imagine if his brother, the last thing his brother said to him apparently was, "Did you do it?" and he said no. And I feel like if he had have done it, at that point he probably would have admitted it.
If you knew you were
going to be hanged anyway, surely you would go, yeah, and give your family that, like, you know, that information that yeah, you did it, and probably you were getting what you deserved. I don't know, not that I believe that, but like
I know what you mean.
That's probably what they thought at the time. So yeah, I thought that was really sad. The last person to be hanged there, and there's like this question over whether he actually did it. So if there are ghosts in Shrewsbury Prison, perfect example of someone that's pretty annoyed that they got hanged. They were the last person, and like and that they didn't actually do anything wrong.
I mean, if I was hanged and I didn't do anything, I would haunt
that place. Yeah, I'd be really annoyed. So during redevelopment in 1972, the remains of 10 prisoners executed at Shrewsbury Prison were unearthed. 9 of those prisoners were unrecognisable and afterwards were cremated. The remaining prisoner was identified as George Riley, and his remains were handed over to his relatives. So hopefully he found some peace after. One of the most famous ghost sightings reported is of the Shadow Man, who is said to lurk in the prison's A-wing. No one knows what his face looks like, but the shadowy silhouette of this mysterious figure, believed to be an ex-officer, has been reported on several occasions.
Funnily enough, there's also a comic book character called Shadow Man.
Man.
I don't know if it's a crossover. Probably not.
During paranormal investigations, reports of faint knocks, doors opening and closing and then slamming shut, and bangs and footsteps coming from the execution room. That was a terrible sentence, but you get the gist. Some guests have even reported being pushed down the stairs and the feeling of a strange grip around their necks, described as being similar to that of a hangman's noose.
Maybe if they weren't being observed, they'd get by a spectral noose.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
So the prison has been used as a filming location for TV shows such as Coronation Street, Time, starring Sean Bean and Stephen Graham, and reality shows Celebrity Hunted and Banged Up.
Yeah, I remember it being in there. I remember with Time, like, we watched that because it was filmed in Shrewsbury initially, but really good program. If you've never watched it.
Well, my dad didn't know that this was Time was being filmed there, and I don't know. This is what he told me. He was on his motorbike and he pulled up at the traffic lights next to the train station, and he said he saw someone walk down the road that looked like Sean Bean.
He used to watch a lot of Sharp, so
he did love Sharp.
So he would probably
he would know what Sean Bean looked like, and it wasn't until a few months later that I was like, Dad, you probably did see Sean Bean walking down the road.
Famously hard man Sean Bean.
Sean Bean.
Did you ever hear that story of Sean Bean where somebody attacked him outside a pub? And he didn't realise he'd been stabbed or something. Like, he chased after him, and not even shaken by being randomly attacked or something like that.
So, and finally, the prison is mentioned in the poem On a Moonlit Heath and Lonesome Bank by A.E. Houseman's A Shropshire Lad. The proximity of the prison to Shrewsbury railway station and junction is highlighted in the verse. They hang us now in Shrewsbury jail, the whistles blow forlorn, and trains all night groan on the rail to men that die at morn.
Start recording.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to... Oh, wait there. I've put to the first episode of it. I've copied it. Right, start that again.
Third.